my favorite subject. I'm going to see whether I can use the clicker correctly. Failed at the first hurdle. Let me have a look. Oh, we're cooking. Right. A lot of you people, since I've been here since Sunday now, have approached me and asked about sport. And you've said, how do you approach sports clubs, individuals? And I think there is an automatic understanding of why sport matters. But I want to put that into a bigger context for you right now. We're going to look at it with regards to the audiences it attracts and also the money that it makes. Sport is huge. V. Becker said that she came from a tiny little place that was divided east and west, and they didn't like each other. I come from quite a small place, greatest city on earth, Liverpool, that's divided blue and red. And it divides families blue and red. I was a red. My dad was a blue. My mum didn't like my dad. She was a red. My sister was a red. Another brother was a blue. Sport divides, but more importantly, it unites. And it unites like nothing else. And the statistics prove that. So if we have a look here from the top, soccer is the biggest sport on the planet. 3 billion followers. This is all about Twitter, social media, TV consumption, following people, commentary, newspaper articles. So there's our top 10. And the ones outside the top 10 show impressive figures. 2.5 billion for the most boring sport on earth, which is cricket. Next to that, we have the second most boring sport on earth, which is baseball. And then we get back through to some more exciting stuff, 410 million for rugby. So it's huge. Let's have a look at when you're watching it. Now, you might look around your society, your community, and you might see a lot of football tops, rugby tops, whatever sport. Maybe not people participating, but people are actively engaging through viewing. 3.5 billion people tune in to watch the World Cup, the Football World Cup. Tour de France, what I think is one of the greatest sporting occasions on the planet. 2.6 billion. The Olympic Games, which I've been very privileged to work and help develop athletes who've participated in Beijing, in London, in Rio, in Tokyo. Phenomenal. When the rest of the world is tearing itself apart and putting up borders and arguing, all these athletes show up to represent in the best possible way, and you all tune in to watch it, and you like fair play, you like sportsmanship, and you like to celebrate a winner. We all do. It makes a ton of money. It is more productive and lucrative than some countries. Currently, around about 440 billion per year, and it's rapidly heading towards a predicted 599.9 billion annual turnover in 2025. I don't have your skills. I wish I did. I'd be on one of the yachts down in the harbor. You guys are amazing at creating businesses. You are entrepreneurs. You know how to reach people and how to engage people. But if I did have your skills and I was looking at an area that I would want to open up an audience within and reach, a $6 billion a year industry would appeal to me. However, I've lived in this my whole life, and it's like a tribe. You have to have the right key and the right language to get in. And that's where, not just me, but really Zendino is working behind the scenes already to help unlock those doors. That's what we're keen about. And we're keen about it not just because of this. And in fact, regardless of this really, we're keen about it because of what it represents, the unity it brings, the vitality it represents. It represents the best of us when we see people who strive and thrive to achieve and represent themselves, their families, and their nations. This was huge. This brings you right up to date with sport. I've been in sport so long now that, I remember an entirely different world when athletes would put their name to anything because it would make them some money. The world has changed. This brought about $1 million drop in one of the biggest companies on the planet in 24 hours. simply by moving one product away and drinking from a cup of water. That really matters. This is a fundamental change. It alters people's perceptions. It alters people's behaviors because they see the people they look up to and admire and respect and idolize and want to be able to follow in the footsteps of do something. So they want to do it too. And this is important because authenticity is important. We now live in times where there is so much fake, so much artificial around us that we crave authenticity. We want real people who've got a real message and a real belief and live their lives accordingly. And what he did in that moment was be authentic. He didn't just go with the big multi-billion-dollar brand. And why does that matter? Because anyone with enough money can sponsor a sporting event. I'm not going to name any names. I haven't even named the name of the bottle that he moved. Clever that. I don't want to end up in court just a moment. But in 2012, there was a huge internationally recognized fast food chain outlet who sponsored the games in 2012, London Olympic Games. Everybody knows them. And when you're in the Olympic Village, the athletes have access to all different types of food, and people like me, nutritionists, are advising them and guiding them on what they should consume to make sure they're ready to compete and how to recover. But this certain fast food outlet had their food there too. That was part of the deal. They paid a lot of money. They were all over the branding, and they had their food there too. And because I hate them, absolutely detest them, I took it upon myself to observe whether or not anybody from any nation actually went and had any of their food. And despite how well Team GB did and our athletes that I worked with and supported, how well they did, one of the biggest senses of satisfaction I took from 2012 is I didn't see one athlete or any of their family go and eat that rubbish. It was incredible. So Zinzino could pay a load of people to put on a top and go, yeah, take the money, and we could play that game. But we're beyond that now. We're beyond that now. People need to believe. It needs to be a part of their lifestyle. It needs to be a part of who they are so that they can live it and breathe it and understand it and put it to their own benefit. And that's where we're at. We've got way more than this, by the way. They're just the nicest pictures I could find at the time. We've got a ton of Zinzino sports brand ambassadors across a whole range of sports. And believe it or not, right now, we're actually in communication with some of the biggest performance institutes in the world. I promise you, out in the States, all over the world, who have an interest in the product. And the reason why they have an interest in our product is that they were already aware of the problem. They know why the omega-3 index matters. They understand that part. They also know how they are failed by most of what's available. Any nutritionist will tell you it's really difficult to get an athlete to purely live off the kind of diet required to achieve that through eating fish every single day. Athletes are humans. So some of you I've spoken to this week, and I might have mentioned this on Monday, in my time, I've dealt with huge, big, burly, strong athletes who play rugby, American football, UFC. They'll go onto the pitch or in the arena and they will battle and tear each other apart, and they'll run through walls. And then I say, I need to eat more broccoli. And they start to cry because they hate broccoli and they don't like cabbage much either. And they want to pull their hair out and they start to crumble. Athletes are humans. They've grown up and they have likes and dislikes. So it's really hard to achieve it through your diet. And the key thing about all of our ambassadors and all the people we will ever work with is that they'll have to be educated and understand it first. They have to know how it fits within what they do, why it matters to them. This is the arc of narrative. Any keen literature people in the room? I've always lived the kind of yin and yang life because I'm a bit of a geek, but I was all right at sport. And so the geeky kids never understood why I was showing up to book club and doing pretty well in school. And the sporty kids didn't understand why I was hanging around with the geeks. They're like, you do sport, you're a jock, why'd you bother with like books? And the booky ones were going, are you just here to, are you like a to infiltrate our group and find out which one of us you're going to shove the head down the toilet. And that was never any of those things. I love literature and I love sport, and the reason why I love them both is that they tell a human story. This happens in pretty much 99.9% of all the literature, Shakespeare, Tolstoy, all the way through to J.K. Rowling. This is what happens. You have the exposition. Characters are introduced and something happens that sets them off, okay? And they have to overcome the action, the difficulty. There's a climax to the action. There's a peak in what happens. And then we have the gradual calm down and the resolution and what happens in the wake of it. Happens in Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, you name it. It happens across pretty much all of those literature tales. But in sport, it happens in less than 10 seconds. It happens in 90 minutes. It happens in 80 minutes. It happens in a World Cup. It happens in the Olympics. You get the rise in action. You get the climax and you get the resolution. It tells a human tale. Now, back in 2008, I was head of human performance for the Ireland rugby team, and they had to go off to Australia. They'd qualified to take part in the World Cup, and they were put in what was called, by all the TV pundits, the group of death. They had to play Tonga and Samoa, big, strong Polynesians, okay? And we had Ireland. Everybody in the room happy with the difference between the average Irish person and a big, huge, strapping Polynesian? Yeah? Good, that's an important part of this story. So we played our first game, and incidentally, the story, if it had gone according to what the media wanted, was that Samoa were going to win. Ireland had showed up in Australia for a good laugh, a bit of the crack. They were going to lose both games. Samoa were going to win their games. They were going to top the group, and that was going to be the story. We played Tonga, and we lost, but we only lost by 2 points. It was expected that Tonga would absolutely pull us apart. The rise in action, the climax, and the resolution were different to what people expected. So suddenly, people were more interested. Then, Tonga played Samoa. Samoa were meant to win. Tonga won. So now Samoa were on the ropes, but it was okay, because all Samoa had to do was do what was predicted, show up, beat up the Irish, win the group, and fly off to the quarterfinals. So we took another story. We got our team together, and we said, right, we've got to play the Samoans, and they're massive, and they hit hard, and we're Irish. So we took the tale of the 300 Spartans, and we sat all the athletes down in a room like this, and we talked them through the hot gates, how the Persian Empire were falling upon those Spartans, and their passion and their belief in what they wanted to achieve in preventing their society from being overrun by the Persians took them to the hot gates. They could control the action at the hot gates. And all those Persians, didn't matter how many there were, because those 300 Spartans were strong enough, united enough, and they were going to fight them off and hold them there. We told this story. That next game was one of the greatest moments of my life. We took the Samoans apart, absolutely annihilated them. We built our own hot gates. I'm getting goosebumps now. It was incredible. You think last night's party was good? They came through and we took them apart. Ireland had won the group. The tickets we had at the airport the next day to fly from Sydney to Brisbane had Samoa written on them. They had to cross them out and give us the tickets for the plane. So we told a different story, and people love it, and the press loved us for it, and it took things forward. This is a recent tale. Now we're going to delve into a bit more of the science. This was this year's Olympics. I could have chosen any event, but I chose this one because it's a great picture, and it shows you the difference between winning and coming fourth. If you're first, second, or third, you get a nice medal. If you're fourth, you don't even get in the picture. The press aren't interested. However, the difference between gold and fourth place, never mind second or third, is 0.13 seconds. But more importantly to us, as sports scientists, as nutritionists, as people looking for those marginal gains that you've heard about, the reaction time was 0.02 seconds. That was the difference between gold and fourth place. So that's powerful. That's a margin. Marginal gains. Reaction time, 0.02. That's the difference between getting a medal and going home and nobody even knowing your name and not even getting in the photograph. So as a sports practitioner, if I was working now with that athlete, I'd say, right, we need to work on reaction time. We need to delve down into this. For you to be a world-class athlete, we need to find 0.02 seconds to put you into the top group. Sport is won on the thinnest of margins. So the omega-3 index, as you will all have heard of, was established in 2004. Now you might think that these Olympians and these athletes and these sports people are superhumans. Someone used that term this week. Promise you they're not. They go to the toilet, they sleep, they moan, they do all the usual stuff. They're just really good at sport. If you've got levels under 4% EPA and DHA of total fatty acids, there's an increased risk of coronary heart disease. 4 to 8% represents moderate risk. And as we all know, you all know, over 8% puts you in the lowest risk. A recent survey looked at collegiate athletes who are really good quality athletes, by the way, representative of a broader population. The average of those was 4.4. Woefully bad, representative of their dietary behavior. So don't assume that this is taken care of. This isn't something that's been addressed and factored within sport. It's a huge gap. It's something that needs to be addressed. Let's look at more of the evidence around omega-3. This is the language I want you to know. When you're speaking to athletes and teams and groups that you do, this is where you need to lead from. We get increased expression of anabolic signaling. What that means is we get a bigger response. So when we've exercised, when we've trained, we get more back. We adapt better. Increased rates of muscle protein synthesis, so our muscles repair better and at a better rate. Faster oxygen kinetics during exercise, so we can make our athletes go longer and further and faster. And reduced content of markers of inflammation following omega-3. That's a huge impact for us in terms of athletic recovery. A recent review also suggests that omega-3 may enhance recovery from physiological stress, as well as elements of cognition, such as reaction time and memory. Reaction time. Didn't we mention that just recently? That was important to us, reaction time. It was an opportunity for us to make something better. It was an opportunity for a marginal gain. And when we see that we get an athlete who is getting a better adaptive response, recovering better, lower markers of inflammation, and all of this leads to a consequence of increased reaction time, that takes us back to here. I've only got to find 0.02 seconds, which is massive, by the way, in the terms of 100 meters. But it's not massive in the terms of real time. What if I can halve that? That might put them in third place. In fact, in this instance, it would have put them in second place. You'd have gone home with a silver medal. If I could just halve that and find 0.01. So this is where it plays its part in performance. Now, much of the research in the area needs to build on this, needs to look at this consequence as cause and effect, and we need to establish it more firmly within the scientific literature. And that, again, is what we're doing at Enzino. So we're speaking to our global network of colleagues and associates and researchers and people who are in the field with some of the biggest teams and athletes on the planet and getting them to do just that. And again, I'll go back, one of the biggest performance institutes in the world is currently running a project with us that is looking at the impact of our product on their athletes and how it brings about those kind of marginal gains. More evidence around it. I know you're taking your photographs, you'll be able to zoom in on the reference. Please do check the references out. Omega-3 fatty acid protects against exercise-induced muscle damage. So hold on. When you're speaking to the sports coach, the practitioner, the nutritionist, and you go, what does it really do? And you go, well, you get more adaptation, you get more of the good stuff, and you get less of the bad stuff. Show me a scenario in life when that's not a good thing. When it comes to athletic performance, it's the Willy Wonka golden ticket. It gets you into the factory. Studies demonstrating omega-3 fatty ingestion attenuates reduction in muscle strength and subjective measures such as soreness. So we retain more strength and we feel less sore. And I have to say, I don't really like using anecdotes and testimony because we're evidence-based. But with the athletes and individuals that I work with, the first thing across the board that they say to me is that they're no longer experiencing any soreness. And I'll tell you another little story. This is a bit more modest within the world of Ironman triathlon. And for those of you who don't know, an Ironman triathlon is a 2.4-mile swim, 112 miles on a bike, and then a 26.2-mile marathon run, all back to back together. And we have age group athletes. So any of you, you might decide this is the sport for you, and it's a rare occasion that you can train, participate, and you can try and qualify for the World Championships in Kona. You can have a go. You don't need to be professional. You don't need to be elite. You can just train really hard and have a go. And an individual approached me a year ago and said, look, I've done one Ironman, and I'd like to do better. And he had taken him over 15 hours to do his first Ironman. He said, but I think I can do better. And so we started to put some training in place. It coincided with me really getting familiar with the Zinzino world. So straight away, we did the test. We got him on omega-3. First thing he says to me, can't get tired. I'm recovering really well. There's no soreness. We trained. We tidied up his nutrition. We kept going. And he participated in his next event, going in to try and get an improved time. This is what he wanted to do. And he did. Really improved his time. He did really well. What took him by surprise is that he then qualified for the World Championships in Kona. He didn't even think it was possible. This is a man, 42, who wanted to do a bit of triathlon as a hobby, wanted to improve his time before, and went from 15 and a half hours to under 10 hours and qualified for the championships in 1 year. And I know that the training has to be right, but training without good recovery is a waste of time. And one of the key things we changed for him, because he was fit already, is we enhanced his recovery. So to summarize, I don't believe this. You might, but I don't believe it. But I'm actually going to finish on time. So when I do, I'd like an extra special round of applause, please, because I never finish on time. So our summary, this is what you need to know. When anyone says to you, yes, but what does it do in sport? It does this. It increases your muscular development. It increases your reaction time. It increases your aerobic capacity. You can go longer, further, and faster. It reduces muscle breakdown, and it reduces muscle soreness. If you're an athlete, if you manage any athletes, your own children, amateur, professional, whatever it is, and none of that appeals to you, then you're mad. And you're unlikely to be as successful as you possibly could be. I'm just going to finish with words by somebody else, really, because as I started off by explaining, I genuinely believe, I've believed this my whole life. Sport has been my religion. It really has. It's given me everything. It's taught me everything about life. It's given me morals and values. It's given me an integrity that I believe could only come from my sport background. And I genuinely believe it's the way that we can unite the world, because we come together with the notion of fairness, of engagement, of participation, and a celebration of life. But Nelson Mandela said all of that far better than I did. So through sport, we can all inspire change. Thank you very much for listening.